What's going on, everybody? Welcome in to another Pixo stream. Hopefully everybody's doing good. Happy Sunday. What's up, Matt? How you doing, buddy? Welcome in, guys. So welcome into another Pixelogy stream. My name is Ian Robinson, also known as Irish Sculpts, and I sculpt toys for a living. And today we're going to be continuing our process on making Ken Masters from Street Fighter. It's some fan art, some lovely stuff, and ideally, Street Fighter Alpha is one of my fun little favorite movies, and I really like this piece. So this is our concept and how to basically that we're going to follow. So if you are new to Pixelogic or you're new to actually watching any artist pipeline or process, each stream is about us just kind of taking you through how we do stuff, and we do it live and we take questions too. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Ooh, you're finally king. Nice, man, nice. Well, Matt, I don't know if you remember, but last week, oh, you know how to key, but for last week, we keyed and I 3D printed our Pokemon. So yeah, what's up, Lewis? Good night in Brazil. Hey, what is happening? Good evening to you, sir. Also, too, so last week we covered keying, the basics of keying our sculpts and get it ready for 3D print. So I would like to real quick, I don't know if I shared it, but I printed it this week. And it's white filament, so I do apologize for the glare, but I went ahead and printed off our little Pokemon guy. Wow, that glare is like really crazy. Let me see. There, that way you can get a little bit of better look. I haven't painted him yet, but we went ahead and we printed that, which is cool. So, yeah. Junior Lag, I've been wanting to get into digital sculpting ZBrush, first time tuning in. Awesome, well, welcome in. This place, because we are, Pixelogic is the company that creates ZBrush, so our goal here is to make sure that new artists like yourself can ask as many questions as possible, and we can try to answer them as best we can, or at least point you into a direction in which you can find the answer. So as I work through this process and kind of work my way through the basic block out to the Valley of the Suck to a good piece, feel free to ask those questions as they go through. Yeah, so I printed them out, and all in FDM because my resin printer died, and I need a new resin printer, so I'm in the market for another one. So I printed them out in FDM, so it definitely can be printed that way as well. And he sits, so he's well balanced, which is fun. He looks great. I haven't printed mine yet. No worries, take your time, but thank you so much, guys. Okay, so let's go ahead and get through it. So, so I haven't touched Ken Masters since we blocked him out. Let's make sure I'm on the right screen. Yep, since we blocked him out. But I have been working on redoing a base mesh of mine. So every year I create my own base mesh to kind of like go through and just check my anatomy, but also just for practice and fun. And I take my base meshes so that they're just kind of basic. So I don't have too much information because I don't want the base mesh to guide me in my decisions. I just want the proportions and volumes there more than anything else. So I went ahead and focused on that a little bit to clean up the anatomy. That's all that happened. Now we're going to be moving them into some sort of pose. What kind of 3D printer are you planning to get next? Oh, that's a great question. Honestly, I'm thinking about getting a Elegoo Saturn. I want a bigger printer. My resin printer, the Epax X1 was a great machine. I had it for over 3 years. It literally just the screen died and it's discontinued. And so if I'm going to upgrade, I might as well just get a new machine. So I'm thinking Saturn just because it's around the same price point as when I first bought my Epax, which was about $500-600. And then great quality, technology's a lot better, and it's a bigger build volume, which is what I want. So yeah. Oh, you got a Saturn that's cool? Nice. So I'm definitely in the market, but yeah. We'll get there. So he is super ugly right now. So let's just start. What I want to do is I want to get the pose. So a lot of my process is when I am sculpting a statue and it's not going to be animated, it's just literally for, a toy statue, collectible. I basically try to get into pose as much as possible. because I feel like it helps guide me in my decisions. So that's what we're going to do. And we're going to get through this. Hopefully get to his face today, clean his face up a little bit. But most importantly right now is the pose. So let's save off a brand new section. We'll call this number 7 _ pose. Posed. And then let's start posing him and get the feel that we want. So, and the way we're going to pose him, I tend to do something a little different each time. But what I really like to do is Dynamesh, break them up, all that stuff. So this will be fun. So we're going to take Slice Curve. And we have subdivisions. So let's delete lower. And then let's go ahead and actually turn off the lines. And let's just focus on get this sliced up a bit, and then we'll end up welding it back together. I'm actually going to go ahead. No, not that way. From here, let's do a little bit of a looser cut. So the reason why I'm going this approach is mainly because I want to just kind of focus on the shape. I don't want to focus necessarily on, you know, correcting the mess. As I just want to correct the mesh, then fix it. I think it'll be good. We're even going to split right down the middle here like this. Yeah, I think that'll be good. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and mirror and weld it. It'll give me these shapes here. Get a different group. And now we're going to go to Geometry, Dynamesh, turn on groups, and I'm going to pick the resolution that I'm at. I'm actually going to drop it just a little bit. And then we're going to go ahead and Dynamesh. And now what this will do is this will break this up and close those holes. And we could just focus on getting the right shape. We'll just move it and we'll resculpt it. They just upgraded the Saturn and it's slightly larger print area. Nice! Oh, man. Yeah. I'm definitely going to have to do that. So, I'm feeling that's where we're going. Okay. Now that we have this part broken up, what we're really looking for, let's bring our reference back. This is what I love about this pose, is we have this beautiful S-curve happening here. We are to take pink, our pen line, from the head. We have this beautiful S-curve. Just flows into itself. It's really nice. Maybe pink's the wrong color. Yeah, blue. Also go maybe a little bit bigger. Yeah, there we go. So I really love this flow, and I love his hairline. How his hairline flows out in this S-curve shape. His arms just come forward. This is, in Taekwondo, we call this Jumbi, which means ready. Like, he is ready and set. I also love his hair whisks coming out this way. And then, of course, what I also love is right here, his hair ties. Just such a cool effect. And then, of course, you have his belt here, right? And then you have these little bits of clothing coming out. So I really like this shape, and this is the shape that we're going to go ahead and try to work with. I'm going to go ahead and hide this. Let's move this off screen, and let's start making that shape. And I like to lead with the hips a bit when I make a pose, and I'm not worried about the rest of this stuff. I have his hands separated, his gloves are separated, so I'm definitely not worried about the rest. So let's lead with his hips. His hips are pretty forward this way. Kind of pull his legs back. We're gonna kind of break this a bit. Roll his arms forward. pull him in. So his back will be kind of a bit elongated there. Stretch that back out. We're going to come in. Also going to just kind of alt-click right there, which will give me a pretty decent spot. And then we'll bring this in right where his arms would rotate. I'm going to bring this in. Since we got to fix anatomy anyway, this is one way that we can definitely just get that corrected real quick. We just get the shapes in, then we'll weld it all back together, and then we'll fix it. I think it'll be great. What is up? Jaguar, how you doing? Welcome in, welcome in. Great to see you here. We are posing today. We got Kid Masters happening here. Any hardcore Street Fighter fans out there? Or just fans in general? I'm one of those fans that, like, I really love it. I grew up with the series. I think it was one of my favorite series to grow up with. I feel like I'm always learning something new with Street Fighter, so need to dive in deeper. Okay. So I'm not too worried right now about these big gaps because I'm just going to end up correcting them. So when you pose like this, we're really just looking for the body shape itself. We don't want too much. I'm also going to kind of break the symmetry a bit. So I'm actually going to, you know what, let's go auto groups so that we can just select the one portion. Come on up here. I played a good amount of Street Fighter 2 back in the day. Haven't kept up with the new ones, though. I know, it's really hard, right? Do you stream in Pixelogic, or do you also stream on your own personal channel? I used to stream on my own personal channel a lot. I started looking back on making more YouTube videos. It's just about timing. Right now, I'm either working or hanging out with my kids. So Pixelogic is the main place that you can catch me, which is every Sunday right now. But I am looking, hopefully in the near future, to expand a little bit more on that because I do miss streaming on my own personal channel. So maybe I'll do like a once a month thing because I miss it personally. So I definitely think it would be good to go back on that a bit. But if you guys would like to follow some of my other accounts, go ahead and follow this link tree. But yeah, I think it might be good to start streaming on my channel again. I'm not torn at all by it. There you go. All right, we're gonna go a little bit more of a power stance here. There we go. All right. So maybe what I'll do with this leg here is we're actually gonna twist this leg out just a little bit different. If you guys are ever posing and you're not quite sure exactly what it is you want to do with the pose, or you're stuck on how the pose should actually feel, do yourself a favor and stand in that pose. I find that it's super helpful to really try to stand in it yourself or kneel in that pose. Whatever the pose is, try to emulate it in real life if possible. If it's a flying pose, please don't hurt yourself. Lay on the floor and try to emulate it that way. But I feel like once you feel the pose, then it's easier to translate to 3D. B, what's happening? Yeah, I'll join you. I haven't in ages, man. I know, man. I know. Cool. Give you a follow. Looking forward to your future streams. Thank you so much. Yeah. So, all right. So this is what we kind of got right now. Now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to do a little bit of fixing. So I'm going to round his shoulders out a bit. We'll fix all the anatomy when we get a second. When I was blocking out Ken Masters, we definitely covered a little bit of blocking out anatomy stuff. So if you want to give that one a go ahead, it's check out Pixelogic's YouTube and he'll be in there. Okay, let's roll these back. Now we are in Dynamesh. Because we're in Dynamesh, it'll be really easy to weld it back together. So I don't need to get it perfect here, just need to get it close enough. With these buttocks, we're going to pull that back a little bit. That welded back in. Even though it's slightly off center, it's going to be just fine. Still roughly the same. Yeah. Now, the other thing I want to do is I'm going to take these portions here, mask that off. I'm actually going to mask this section here and really soften this. So if you hold Control, tap on the outside, and then tap on the inside of your, or tap on your mesh, that softens. If you hold Control Alt, it sharpens, right? There's a little shortcut. So you can switch soften on both sides. And then what I'm going to do here, right about here, I'm going to roll this forward. Pull this forward a bit. Yeah, there's a little bit of a forward momentum happening here. Rounding of his back is super important on this pose. About ZBrush's new alignment feature, how do I specify which subtools I want to align by masking them? Ooh, great question. Okay, let me save this real quick. Okay, let me grab this guy right here, and I'm gonna go ahead and copy this. These are all different subtools, just like that. So with the new aligned feature, what we have is basically whichever subtool is selected is going to be the one that everything gets aligned to, and everything that's visible should move. If you would like to have something else, like for example, if I want to select this guy right here, and I'll make this different poly groups so you can see. Okay. So you can see here I have all these different poly groups. So if I want to align everything to this one, I'll select this subtool, and then I will go ahead and align, hit the align button. But let's say I only want this one right here to align. Well, what's really cool is if you notice in your subtool palette, you have all these different versions. And these versions are basically a way to organize your visibility. So let's say I want to just, on V3, I only want this subtool and this subtool selected. That's one way, so you can switch back between V4 and V3. So that's one way to hide things. Or what you can do is just select the ones that you want visible to align those however you would like to, and then when you turn the other one on, that's still there hidden. So it's always going to grab everything that is visible. So it's important to either have folders or have this this new version selection, like, you know, for your subtool palette to hide and keep things what's going on. So that's how you use the new line feature. So that's how you would specify which subtools you would want to mask you by. And then now here's the thing, yeah, if you have all these different subtools and I have this one selected, if I mask this one and then come here, and let's go here, let's put that back. If this one's masked, I don't think it would move. Yeah, it doesn't move. So by masking them, that works as well. So you can have everything set up that way. And it's Control-Z operational without having to go back to that subtool. So if you make that movement on this subtool, and they're like, I don't like it, Control-Z, it pushes that action back because you started that action on that subtool. But if I were to switch to this one, that action would only select what it recognized before. So if you have enough on there, that's how you would do it. And yes, masking does work. Hey, what's up, Chris? Every time I watch something, I watch you learn something new. That's awesome. Good, good, good. I'm new to 3D printing. I was wondering if there was a software that can simulate if your character's pose would be able to stand without falling, or if it's just trial and error thing. That's a great question. So I don't know if ZBrush has it specifically, so can't speak to that. In my experience, I think 3D Builder that comes default if you run PC might do it, but honestly, I don't know too much if that's the case. What I would suggest you do is, and this is my experience, based on how my experience over time, and working at Funko has really tested this knowledge. But let's pull up. So here's my print, my Quaxley print. Let me load up that model, and then I can explain my thought process. But in simple terms, if you keep everything centered to your model, it should stand, theoretically. But let's pull up that other stream. So let's go to, where did I put it? Is it that one? There, let me just look real quick. Waxley. I have it here somewhere, I promise. You know what? Here. There it is. Quaxley stream. Okay. Let's open up the ZTL. Okay. So with this, for example, with this head, right? We have this head that's kind of floating. One of the things that I decided to do was make sure that when I take a look at the head itself, I keep it as center over the mesh it connects to as much as possible. Now, this is a little bit back heavy, but with 3D printing, one of the things you can do to mitigate weight is by making the base super heavy, like with a denser infill, if you're doing, or make it solid if you're printing in resin, and then you can hollow this out and make it lighter. As far as programs that do that kind of weight, just that gravity play, I'm not too sure 100%. So I would like to say keep more towards a 45-degree angle thing. So for example, if I were to take this head, if I were to roll this head back, right? Obviously the weight itself is too back heavy, and that could cause it to lean back. And same thing if it was too forward heavy. Yep. If it's too forward heavy. Gosh, there we go. Ow, my pen is just not working with me today. If it's too forward heavy, again, it would fall forward, right? So try to keep it as center as possible, and then off of angles, for example, from center line out, you keep it within a 40 to 45 degree radius from straight up and down, 45 off to one side or another. As long as it's not leaning too far back, it should be okay, as long as the center point is dead center. So start with that. Hopefully that helps you out. Yeah. Hopefully that makes sense. What I can say, and actually I want to go a little bit deeper with that. So if we were to go to my Vega and Chung Lee piece, there are ways to ensure parts get balanced correctly. So let's come here to this piece right here. So this is my Vega and Chung Lee piece. If you guys hadn't seen it, definitely check it out on my ArtStation. It's a really fun piece. But to do stuff more like this, where the part itself is very much, it's obviously off-center, one of the things that I did, where's my sliced file? This is not my sliced file. Is you create a counter key that really holds in that that section. So let's go 3D print. Decimated, there we go. That's the one I was looking for. So with something like this, for example, once I welded her feet to his head, notice the key length is massively long. And I made sure that that embedded enough to provide a little bit of counterweight. So when it's sitting in there and it's drooping down, which it naturally would do, the key would catch. The key is long enough that it won't just slide out. And so for something like this, that's when I was like, I'm kind of breaking the rules of physics, and it's going to want to be super, top heavy, and it's going to want to fall in this direction, right? It's going to want to go down that way. So I made sure that I had a key that would point down long enough into the torso and kind of push against the body so that it would stop this from falling over. So it's a little bit of trial and error, but once you play with it a few times, it becomes a little bit easier to kind of see like, oh, that's how it responds. Great, wonderful. The other thing too is if you focus on just keeping everything where the main weight of it is centered, once you start gluing your model together, you're going to realize how much of it actually stands on its own without really any issue. So keep it center line, keep all the weight in above center, and then of course, make sure your keys are big enough to kind of counterhold. So there you guys go. Hopefully that made sense and that wasn't like too crazy of a ramble. Okay, let's go ahead and we're gonna fix that head. So let's put this head up here for now. I'm not worried about the head. In fact, I'm gonna hide the head. I'm gonna focus on just getting the main thing built here. Okay, let's go ahead and mask this part off here, and let's fix this section. I'm gonna go ahead and mask. I'm gonna grab this. I'm gonna mask right here. And again, hold Control, tap on both sides, reverse tapping, get it nice and soft. I'm gonna go ahead and round his neck a little bit more. He's going to be pretty far forward. With poses, we really want to like push our poses as much as possible. So ideally, if you think you can push it further, do so. Really push it. We almost want to break the pose, and then we want to dial that pose back. And so we really want that nice shape. So, and here talking about weight, right? Want to make sure that this guy can stand. So I'm going to be, as I'm pushing and pulling him forward, I am definitely breaking the anatomy a bit here. But ideally, I want to make sure that I keep everything as center as possible. And we're going to kind of, I wouldn't say cheat a little bit, but we're going to make sure that his knees aren't totally straight. Come back up, rotate that forward a bit. Okay. Okay, great. Cool. And when I do this technique a lot, what I use a lot of the times is Move Infinity. One of my favorite brushes, but it helps me move the mesh together all the way across the field because it grabs everything from here straight down. So if I move this way, it's all going to come out. Where if I use just the normal move brush, you can see here it's only grabbing that one section. So Move Infinite, Really kind of helps me reshape my character a bit. And he's stylized a bit too, so we get a little crazy with anatomy. It's, it's not the end of the world. There we go. Yeah, that's better. So again, talking about 3D printing tips, the weight that's right here, most of the weight from his head to his feet are going to be roughly in line with each other. And because of that, it's really going to help the print stand on its own the way we want it to. Another cool little tip when it comes to trying to figure out weight distribution is the tripod effect. So if there's ever a time like your character's walking, right? He's going through. What we could do is actually, even on this just a little bit. In fact, let's do it. We're going to give him a tripod effect. So tripod, obviously we're really focusing on 3 points of contact. So you can do that with a human character like this, where we can kind of offset his legs just a little bit. And by doing just a slight offset, we can cause just a little bit more balance. And also gives a little bit more anatomically, or not anatomically, it gives it like asymmetrical feel. Words today. Oh yes, so I am going Control Shift, and then I am touching once with a mouse click. Yes. And because that's selecting each poly group. So when I Dynamesh this and then did auto groups, that is going to make for a quick selection. Another cool way, if let's say I just wanted to move this forearm, if all the poly groups are different and I hold Control Shift and touch with the gizmo, it's going to mask every other poly group except for the one I touched. So then I can just move this arm a little bit more. Yeah, great question. So now I can come in here and be like, I really want this one to be in a little bit more, right? So that's one way to do it. And now we're going to have this just slightly offset that way. The other thing, too, is you notice that this happens sometimes. So if you guys have Select Lasso turned on, Select Lasso has this ability to grab just like an edge loop, but it's really annoying when you're trying to grab a part, and then, you have to click it a few times. So you can do one of two things. You can either take the lasso, which is that stroke right there, and change that to rec. Or what I find is just click select rec, which already has rec as the stroke selected. And then that will just, doesn't matter. It will always grab just the one itself. Even if you select just an edge loop with select rec, it's going to grab just the whole poly group. But with select lasso, it can select just that edge loop. So that's how you kind of get around that. Oh, you are so welcome, Lewis. So welcome. No worries. I've been using ZBrush for over 6 years, and I still learn something new easily once a week. So trust me, there's so much in here to dive in that you're just like, what do you do? I wish more tutorials had this keyboard key press indicator. Makes following steps so much easier. Oh, awesome. Good. No, I'm glad. I was afraid. I've ran it for a while now, but I'll be honest. I was always kind of afraid it was going to be more of a nuisance than anything else. So if it's helping you out, perfect. I'll keep it. I'm just using OBS input. You can just Google that. And if you use OBS, you can add it on yourself, which is nice. Okay. Yeah, so I have a tendency to move a little fast sometimes, so if you need me to repeat something, definitely shout at me. Be like, what are you doing? Okay. Alright, we'll have to fix the anatomy there. And there. That's okay, though. Alright. Let's grab the normal move brush. And we're going to go ahead and start connecting in where his elbow would be creased. Bring now his arms are bending in, so his biceps are starting to flex, right? So we're gonna definitely be pumping out his biceps a little bit. Then of course his forearm muscles are going to be flexing in this direction. And then when you do this, you can pump out your triceps as well. So you can get a bit of a tricep flex here, but it won't be like bulky, you know what I mean? It's going to be more of a tonal look. If you've ever stood in the mirror and started flexing yourself, then you know. Okay. You guys ever do this where you're off asymmetrically like this, right? Like I just moved all of this and now it's incorrect. Something that you could definitely do. I don't want the legs to be moved. I just want the arms itself. I messed up one arm over the other and I don't want to just mirror and weld it. So something that I do a lot is I go ahead and I split hidden. And then what's really cool, I'm going to pull up the floor for this. So this green line right here, how mirror and weld works is it works by looking at the screen left side of your viewport, and then it compares it to the right side. And then any changes that are different, it's going to mirror and weld in this direction. So it's going to mirror and weld from screen left to screen right. Right? However, if there's nothing on this side, it's completely blank, all you have to do is just mirror and weld it. And it spits it on over to the other side, which is pretty cool. But if there's a tiny little speck on that side, and I couldn't find it for whatever reason, you would want to go to flip it at that point. So you'd want to go, boop, boop, boop. Where is it? Yeah. Scale, Subtool Master. You want to mirror that, you can mirror it that way. Or what you could do, leave. Where were you? Aha, mirror. So you just go to deformation, mirror that, and then you can go ahead and mirror and weld it. So that's the two ways you can really do that very technically. But if there's nothing over here whatsoever, just go ahead and mirror and weld it. It's just going to take the information on the right, on the left side, say if there's nothing there, look at the right, be like, ooh, there is something there, and it pulls it on over. Hey, what's up? Oh, are you preparing the model for print? For Ken Masters, we are actually currently just, we're still blocking that out. However, we did prep and print Waxley, which that is all done. And if you missed that stream, I can actually send it to you real quick because it covered in depth on how I sliced that from start to finish. And so I would definitely like to get you to watch that, because we go over just basic key cutting, which is really nice. So let me pull that up real quick. And then I'll end up doing that again with Ken Masters as well. Where are we? Okay, cool. So if you would like to see me key cut in about 2 hours, there it is right there. What's up, Maker? How you doing? Maker JP? And Casey's in the house. What is happening? So go ahead and check that video out right there. That's me going through. It was a little shorter of a stream last week because I wasn't feeling well, but we go over cutting and printing. I even give away the model in that one. So if you guys would like to print one yourself, hop on over there. And towards the end, I drop a link. You guys can check that out. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and delete hidden on that. We have our arms right here. Perfect. And so we mirror and weld that. Now we can just merge that back together. Go to merge, merge down, say yes. Now that's all back together and it's fine. And I'll have to remember to hit symmetry. Use symmetry already. Boop. This guy indeed lives, right? By the way, I was curious: are Funko characters only have the big square heads, or do they also have a line with characters that have normal proportions? So we have a wide range. So the Pop collection is more of the square heads, but we have a Soda collection that has a little bit more of a rounded head. There's like some Funko Minis. So there are a few regular, but obviously the Pops are what they're most known for, which are indeed the square heads. If you're curious what a Soda one comes in, shout it out where I work. There's the sodas come with a little soda can. Super adorable. Now let me come put this over here so you guys can see a little bit better. So this is how the sodas would come, and inside is a character that looks a little bit more like that. It's still very stylized because that's Funko's style, and it's super fun. But if you look at the original character, and then you look at, the soda itself, so yeah, and they're just slightly smaller than the can. Lewis, before I even read that first part, I'm going to tell you, please bug the heck out of me. Go ahead. That's what I'm here for, guys. Definitely here. I love sculpting. I could sculpt this character anywhere, anytime, but definitely here for you guys. So please ask your questions. I have to define before these polygroups of a human body. For example, the autographs in separate parts without joining them, but they can all be in the same subtool, correct? Let me reread that. Sorry. I just want to make sure I got it right. Have to define before these polygroups of... Yes. Okay, so if I understand the question correctly, this is one subtool, but we have multiple polygroups and separate pieces within each within the subtool. So you can have all these parts broken up into one subtool without merging them. If you are running Dynamesh, make sure that you have groups turned on, and that will keep them separated. So every time I Dynamesh, it's going to keep the group separated. If I turn that off, it welds it back together if anything is touching. So you can have multiple subtools within one subtool without them being welded together. Just make sure that the process allows for that. So hopefully that was the right answer for your question. If not, let me know and I can explain. However, my family supports you. My kids have all the FNAF characters. We're very excited to see the new line show up on the Funko site first and early. Nice. Nothing like a direct sale. Woohoo! That's so awesome. No, the fans of Funko fanatics are just amazing. So thank you for the support. What Dynamesh resolution do you like to work at? So the resolution of Dynamesh is scale and viewport dependent, but I typically start as low as possible and then work my way up. So I generally speaking will start at 64, and then I'll work my way up in increments of 64. So right now I'm only working at 264. But let me turn the line work on for a second so you guys can see. At this scale, based on this current size in the viewport, 264 is perfectly fine, right? But if I were to scale this up and re-Dynamesh, 264 might be too much. So start low and then get something that you relatively like. If you're really tiny, and then I swipe at 64 or 264, notice how low res that just got. It's terrible, right? So it's definitely scale and viewport dependent. So I just say, find a decent size and then start low and then work your way up, and that should get you where you want to go, is what I'm saying. There's no real one right answer because we're constantly constantly adjusting them. But that's what I do. Okay. I'm not going for perfect right now, but I am trying to get that shape that I would like. So I'm looking at all the different angles. And when you're posing a character, especially if you plan on working asymmetrically, definitely take your time and don't rush the process. Never a race. As long as you get the result you're looking for, you'd be just fine. Okay. Cool. Let's actually showcase the hands now. We're going to do the same thing with the hands. We're going to end up making two fists. We have this hand base mesh that we started with, so I'm actually going to go ahead. We're actually going to delete one side, because you only need to work on one, and then once you work on one, you can just mirror and weld it. And I definitely have subdivisions. I'm going to go ahead and drop that. Then we'll delete hidden. And then let's look at the feet. That's the lower part of the previous legs. There we go, feet. So let's actually, same thing, delete hidden. Now what's cool is you got to move the ankle a little bit. I'm actually going to go ahead and select where the joint would be, like this. Kind of soften that a bit because there's going to be some stretching when your foot moves and the heel compresses and flexes. You're going to have a little bit of stretch going on there. So we're actually going to soften this up a lot. I'm going to bring this forward. We're going to angle this way a little bit too. Putting some weight out there. And then the thing to remember is your toes need to go where your knees are. You can have your toe kind of flex like 15-20 degrees at most, but generally speaking, try to keep that aligned as much as possible. Oh, cool. I never knew that scale size affecting Dynamesh. Good to know. Absolutely. You're so welcome. Nightbot is dropping a bunch of links. Awesome. Yeah, if you guys haven't noticed yet, but there is definitely some cool stuff happening over at Pixo. Last week, Paul Gabry had an artist on. We showcased an artist, and they were going through kind of talking some really cool tips and tricks. So definitely worth checking out. So if you get a moment, hop on that last video and see what you think. Some really neat stuff there. It's always fun to see what other artists do. Let's throw that there. I'll line that a little bit more. Ooh, my toes got brokey. Let's go ahead and auto-group that. There we go, cool. I'm actually going to duplicate this, and then I'm going to mirror and weld it. Then I'm going to highlight that side and delete it. Because this foot is going to be just slightly more forward. That is a big difference. Now, I'm not worried about anatomy too much. I don't care about me breaking the geometry. What I care about is me just getting something that I can use fairly well. So put it in place and we'll fix it later. You can always fix what you break. Especially if you break it on purpose. I do a lot. I'm actually going to name this. I named the feet to the character's foot, not to what I'm seeing. So even though it's on my right side, definitely his left foot. And then this is his right foot. Just a little bit of a habit that I do. For this one, that's going to be his right hand. I like how I went R_foot the other one, then I typed out right. Go. I'm working with multiple subtools and then I add them in an assembly project. The subtools will be repositioned. If I make a change to the subtool, is there a way to have it update the assembly? When you mean assembly, do you mean assembly within ZBrush, or do you mean an assembly like ZBrush to Marmoset or ZBrush to Maya, where you're utilizing an FBX? Because within ZBrush, if you are creating an assembly line like up here, nothing will change up here, but you can copy and paste it. But with other programs like Marmoset, for example, if you're working with an FBX and you make a save to that FBX and those changes are there, it will apply in Marmoset in real time. So then you don't have to worry about going back and forth. But could you elaborate on within ZBrush? Okay. So within ZBrush, I would say just copy and paste it. That's the only real way I know how to do it. So I don't have a better answer for you. I wish I did. But copy and paste, I think, would be the best way to do it. Because, you know, if you have something up here, like, let's take this, for example. So let's say these hands, right? I'm going to duplicate this. So I'm going to hit Make Polymesh 3D. And I copy these hands. Right, I'm going to paste it. Boom. And then I come back here and I make that change. This one in particular gets rotated out this way because he's cool. Actually, he's like this because it's spirit hands. You know, you could just copy and paste that. I don't know if there's a better way. I'm trying to think. I can't think of another way. I'm really sorry. I don't think there is another way. Somebody else might know. Drop an answer, but I think that's the only way to really do it. Because each one of these is kind of independent on itself. So sorry, yeah. I wish I had a better answer for you. Let me think about it a little bit more, and if I can think of another one, I'll come back to it. Let's definitely get rid of some of this stuff up here, because this stuff up here is just going to crowd my memory. Okay, what we're going to do now is I'm actually going to make a fist with this hand right here. So I have some decent resolution. I'm going to go ahead and delete lower, delete higher, and then turn on groups. And then I'm going to hit Dynamesh. That's way too low. And increase. Way too much. Okay, there you go. That works. We got this guy right here, and we're going to end up making a fist. So I'm actually going to delete those fingers there. Yeah, it works sort of, but yeah. May I ask why you are choosing to go that route where are you just like pulling assets at the top and you're like, oh, I'm going to need to borrow this? I'm just kind of curious if there's a reason why you're going that route. I would just create separate ZTL files or maybe create a project file with history. It's a big file though. Say it and I like swallow really hard. Like, it's a big file. But yeah, I'm just kind of curious on that workflow. If you want to elaborate, or you can actually elaborate in my Discord segue. If you're not a part of the Discord, ping me and let me know. I was just kind of curious. Okay, what I'm gonna do now, the easiest way I know how to make a fist. I'm gonna take this guy right here. I'm gonna take slice curve. I'm gonna come in, slice above the knuckle, slice above the knuckle. Dynamesh with groups. Magic. Just kidding. You have a problem with poly loops? Let me know if I can help you out. Ask your question, and then I'll do my best. Go ahead and bendy this finger. Then the center. Yeah, I've been working on an AT-AT, which I posted in ZBrush Central. Nice! Dude, nice. Cool. I'm gonna have to check out this AT-AT now, man. Piqued my interest. Sure, it's killer. That's awesome. Just using move infinite again to make sure I move the whole finger the way I would like to move it. Also going to rotate it a bit. So what we're doing is we're making a knuckle that is going to be kind of touching a bit. Grab this guy right here. Fix it later. Once we make one bent finger, the rest are easy. Yeah, let's see here. Each model part is easier to create in a separate subtool than add it to a larger. Absolutely, I so agree with that sentence. I could throw a link in the Discord. Absolutely, I would love to see it. Yeah, that's the only way I can think of how to do that either. And now that makes sense why you're doing that, because you got such a big file. And that's a very good point, too, by the way. You know, anybody's working on large files, you know, depending on how powerful your computer is, really does depend on how big one file can be. I will say that if you have a lot of stacks up here, it's still, ZBrush is still kind of figuring all that out. So even the heavier those are, you know, the heavier your computer has to work. So ultimately, try your best to, break things up as much as possible. I can tell you that if you turn on dynamic solo and you have a lot of other things happening, you know, that's going to help as you move, hide everything. So that's another way too to kind of keep things a little bit calm. But that makes sense now. Thanks for sharing. I appreciate it. Days, hey my friend. Poly loops after sphere. I was following a rope tutorial and I was supposed to have separate colors to add rope brush. I didn't select one, but mini was selected. So annoying. Ah, okay. Okay. So, let me save this real fast. And let's go over that real quick. Okay, so if I understand correctly, the rope tutorial you were following is supposed to have separate poly groups, but you couldn't select. Did you have separate poly groups, or was it all one poly group and you couldn't like select one, which is what I'm thinking that was the problem. Let me kind of go over it while you answer that question, but let me grab a cylinder and we'll go make polymesh 3D. Okay. So let me just kind of maybe try to recreate what you're going on there. So if we go to geometry, edge loop, and we're going to delete loops, I'm going to go through, kind of do this thing here. I'm going to go ahead and copy this right there. Copy this and go right there. And we're going to go right in the center. Actually, you know what? I'm actually going to do this thing where I kind of do this. Really make it fancy. Right? And I'm even going to go one crazier. We're going to go deformation and make sure this is in the center. And I'm going to go twist. And we're going to twist on the Y. Let's twist X. Yeah, let's twist on the Y. Let's center that to the home position. That will help me when I twist that. Let's actually add quick here. help if I have information. Go right here like such. Create this. Just drop it in general chat and just talk to me. Just tag me in it, I mean. And that'll be just fine. Thank you. All one polygroup, couldn't select one. So yeah, you had something like this, right? We're gonna twist that just so we can really complicate it even further. Okay, so as long as, when you're following a tutorial, and as long as you don't weld things together, everything can be separated by auto groups. So what you're gonna wanna do is, let's say you built this whole mesh and you're like, okay, I know this is all separate, but darn it, I can't seem to grab just one. All you need to do is go down on your tool menu right here on the side. I want you to go down to polygroups, and I want you to select auto groups. And that will automatically auto group that. So when I select it, I'll then have that one piece of geometry right there for you to select. Now, if, let's say it's all one polygroup, and you were following a weld, you go to modify topology, then you weld points, and then you try to go to auto groups, you might get some slightly different results. But as you can see here, auto groups still kind of bails me out a bit because it's not fully merged together. So anytime you have your mesh that's singled out like this, as long as it's not welded together, i.e. like Dynamesh is, so even let's say we were to have different polygroups, and we were to go to groups, Dynamesh, right? And then we take the groups off and we Dynamesh it again. Now it's all welded and it's really nasty. As long as you don't have things purposely welded together and it's all one group, hit auto groups and it will actually allow you to pick out that piece. Now, if you're having something where you did, you set this to the center and then you did remesh by union, now you're going to have a little bit of a different time because, well, it's all welded together. So again, as long as the geometry is not welded together and it's two separate pieces, kind of like what you're explaining, you should be able to just hit auto groups, and that should allow you to then Control Shift select your mesh that you want to take out of there. So then you can just move that piece and you should be done. Hopefully that answers your question, but that should be the easiest way to fix that. Hello, welcome in. So I primarily speak English, but I definitely do not mind using Google Translate. So I will try to answer my question as best you can by just detecting the language. So I apologize if it's not a true translation. What am I doing? So what I'm doing right now is actually we're sculpting Ken Masters, and I was going over a auto group tutorial on the fly. How can you add individual polygons to a polygroup? ZModeler should be your best friend at that point. If you have something like this, I want to add more poly count, more polygroups within this area. Hover over a line, insert. With insert multiple edge loops, you can actually just go ahead and start adding more edge loops, which will then in turn give you more poly loops there, and then you can expand off of those. With ZModeler, if you're new to it, hit B for brush, Z for ZModeler, and M for the modeler brush. And then all you have to do is just hover over a line, a face, or a point. And if you hover over a face and hit spacebar, you'll get all of the modeler poly actions for that face. If I hover over an edge, it'll say point action, and if I hover over a line, it will say edge line action. So polygon actions, edge, and point. So all you need to do is hover over a spot that you want to make a change. I want to add more polygons, so I need to add more edge loops, which will naturally give me more polygons. And I can do that by selecting insert multiple edge loops, and then from there coming through. Now let's say I don't want to change the poly group, I just want to add the lines. I'll then go down to the bottom and keep poly group down here at the very, very bottom. And then when I grab that line and I drag, it will add more polygons without adding another poly group. Now, if I want to just make if I want to make one loop a different poly group, when I hover over the edge, I pick poly group, and then I click, hold, and hit Alt. That will change the poly group. If I would like to color, now if you're just hovering over a poly group, and I want to just color the chain, or want to just change the color of one polygon or multiple polygons, click and hold, and then I can drag, make this white space. If I let go of Alt and start tapping Alt, I can then drag, change those poly groups how I want. If I would like to change it back, then I click here, hold Shift, come back, and I start. So what I'll do is hold Tap, hold Shift, let go of Alt, come in here, let go of Shift, and I can remove those any way I'd want. The modeler is really, really cool that way. I don't think that quite works that way. Yeah, so that's how you would do that. What's up, Too Fun? Solo. That AT&T is awesome. Nice. So hopefully that answered your question. That's a good question, too. I like it. I love it. Okay. Come on over here. Let's start kind of cleaning this finger up a little bit. When you make a fist, all your fingers nice and tight should be really closed. So we're going to go ahead and mask that section off. And you want multiple rows in the same color poly group. But and if you want multiple rows of the same poly loop, if you want multiple rows of the same poly loop, so honestly, what I like to do is actually, if you just want all of these to be the same group, it's much easier to just grab and hit Control W. But if you want to use the poly group section, what is it? You just touch a bunch of lines. I don't think you can multiple shift. I don't think you can multi-click. No, you can't multi-click that way. I wish you could. That'd be really cool. But if you would like to, if you're doing edge loops, like insert multiple edge loops, and you say same poly group, that will change the whole poly group, but it will keep it that same one. If I tap Alt, it's going to change it. So that would be the easiest way to do that action. I'm working on a Ken Masters fan art from Street Fighter and doing a bunch of really fun tutorials. But yeah, I would say if you needed to do multiple poly loops as quickly as possible, just take the select lasso real quick. Maybe grab the loops that you want real fast. Invert, Control W, boom, call it done. That's way faster in my opinion. Oh, you're asking for the hair creation workflow? Yeah, that's actually great. So with the hair workflow, yeah, a lot of times what I would do. Let's actually come in here real quick. Oop. I personally believe that the hand-controlled route is the best route. So even though it's a teeny bit longer in the process, I think it's well worth it because you have full control over everything. But everybody has a trick up their sleeve, so you know, do what you definitely need to. But here, what I would say is, you know, let's say I want to add some hair real quick, so I'm going to use slice curve real fast. Make an edge loop right there. I'm in here, expand this out, right? And you'll see me doing, we're going to be doing this a little bit more in depth with Ken Masters, but just for now, get an idea. So, you know, you want the hair flowing this way, right? Cool. So now you're like, okay, I want to add different poly groups down here. Yeah, what I would do is, first things first, is I would actually group by normals, right? So go to poly groups and then group by normals, just so that you have this different flow. And then I'd grab just the section that I need. And then, yeah, what I would do is I'd hover over that edge, poly group. And then, yeah, I'd start picking what I needed to. Have symmetry turned on. So we're getting some... Why is it doing that? Shouldn't be picking more than... You know what? Maybe it's because... Why is it doing that? Interesting. Having it pick 2. That's always fun. And I don't have symmetry turned on. But you'll get the idea. Come in here, grab all this. Right? So for our header groups. And then what I would do after that is just go to your stroke. Yeah, curve functions, polygroups, right? Then from there, wow, my fingers are butterfingers. Then from there, stroke, frame, mesh, and now you got that bit. I would take my time and really clean that up, but, you know, just as a quick example. Nice. Hello, hello! Welcome in, welcome in. Ani Rocks, how you doing? Now, there's something I definitely like to do when I make a fist, and you might see me doing, like, looking off. When I make hands, I check out my own hands all the time. No real way to say that. But I take a look at my hands, and I see how the hand is deforming. I don't just, you know what I mean? I don't just sit there and just... I always have reference, and in this case, my hand is my reference here. So I'm definitely coming through as best I can, checking out my own hand, and then making my decisions based off of that. Your hands are the best reference you have, so you might as well use them. You use sphere in the beginning, and I have to all the way down. Use the Z-sphere in the beginning and have a way the rope should go. Oh, interesting. So I'm doing Ken Masters at the moment from Street Fighter. We are in the middle of posing, blocking. We're blocking out the pose. I work a lot in asymmetrical when I do my statues. So, just kind of making a fist right now. Let's see here. I didn't know that technique in posing the fingers. Can I elaborate? Sorry, I'm not quite sure I understand your question. Could you rephrase the question? Technique. Oh, yes, you're using the Z-sphere adaptive skin method. That's a great method. Definitely what you can do. Are you using Dynamesh? You got stuck in select. Okay, let me finish this hand real quick, and then let me show you a trick that might help you out. And what I was saying about my hand was I look at my own hand when I go for reference. So when we were talking about hands for a second. Oh, yes, absolutely. No, you're totally fine. Sorry. I tend to overcomplicate questions sometimes. So what I am doing, actually, so I'll explain it on the body, and then I'll just continue to showcase it on the hands. But, so I'm using Dynamesh that has everything broken up into its own groove. When you use Dynamesh, with groups turned on, when you go to Dynamesh, it keeps those groups completely separate. So with my hand, right now, I had my base mesh hand that I was working on, and then I broke up the thumb and the first finger, deleted the other fingers, and what I'm doing is keeping them in different groups, and I'm actually positioning and moving the hand. We're going to make a fist right now, and so I'm just comparing my hand to this, but when I need to re-Dynamesh, I can do so, and I can keep the groups completely separate, which allows me to better kind of push and fix the geometry on the fly. Yeah, not a problem. Absolutely. Okay. So this way, what I can do now is, keeping everything Dynamesh, I can actually come through here, and I can just focus on getting the look and feel of these, of the hands, and not have to worry too much about anything else. And it allows me a bit more control without having to worry about breaking the geometry. Because let's face it, when we have everything Z-remeshed and we're going to pose, if everything's welded together, the pose itself is still going to break. It's just going to stretch and deform, and we need to correct it. So because I work asymmetrically on this statue in particular, and I'm going to have to fix the mesh anyway, I'm just like, let's freaking do it, and let's let's go through and just start using Dynamesh with groups. It's a bit of an older, like an old school way of doing it, but I tend to kind of fall on it. I think it's pretty cool. Yeah, it's definitely a lot easier, and I get to really just kind of see it all come together. And then once I weld it together at the right resolution, I can clean it up, and then we are good to go. And I get tricks like this where I'm able to control drag, right? I can move this, I can scale this finger up just a little bit more. And then I can control drag, rotate this around, scale this down. Hold control drag here, maybe push that a bit. Then same with this one, control drag. And actually control scale this down a bit. Right? Then what I can do before I Z-remesh, I make sure that I hit auto groups. Polygroups, auto groups, and then I can go ahead, hit that. Now I can fix the palm itself. But yeah, definitely worth giving it a shot. Okay, so let's see here. Let me tidy this hand up a little bit, and then we'll get to the Z-sphere. Z-spheres is really, really cool. I really love working with Z-spheres. So there's a couple tricks there I think you're going to like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and... yeah, there we go. Just keep that right there. Whoop, thumbs up. We'll give ourselves a thumbs up. Okay, let's go. Let's do the Z-sphere route. So I'm actually going to... We could just do it in the same menu right here. Let's go down at the bottom. So we're going to insert a Z-sphere. Okay. If anybody here is new to Z-spheres, Z-sphere sketching is really fun and really simple, but there's a couple key things you want to remember. A, you hit A, it's going to give you a preview. Hit A again, it's going to take that preview away. But there's some really fun stuff with previews that you actually want to play with that I find make it easier. When you hit A to preview, you're previewing a Dynameshed object, and that Dynamesh object is going to be welded together. We don't want that. So we're going to go ahead and hit A again. And just so you know real quick, Q drags up another item, W moves an item, E scales an item, and R rotates an item. So hit Q. If you hit Shift, that will snap. And then, of course, hit W. We can move that item. And then hit Q again. Also, 2, Symmetry does work. right? Which is super fun. You want to make sure that you're doing symmetrical stuff, that you keep it symmetrical, right? So you're just going to see, we're going to draw something out real quick. Now, if I hit A, this is all Dynamesh, but what's cool is each sphere gives me a different poly group. So here's what you're going to want to do. First thing to remember is that anything that the Z-sphere is always going to be attached to itself. It's going to keep that thing and itself welded. So one Z-sphere per one object. Easiest way to remember it. But if you go down here to Adaptive Skin, let's look at some of the things that we have. A turns on our preview. Density is how much, mesh, how thick your mesh is going to be, how dense your mesh is going to be. So we turn that down to 0, and that lessens the density, right? Turn that up to 2, that increases it. So we want to kind of keep that in mind. I'd like to drop that down. And then, of course, Dynamesh resolution is also keeping that preview much denser as well. But if you turn it down to 0 and we hit preview, look at that. This is ZBrush mesh. Z-mesh mesh. So now my Dynamesh is gone, right? Again, you also have some radial if you have more. You can play with your G radial, your twist. You can do all that stuff if you want. It's all Control Z. And then, of course, classic skinning allows you to mess with this sort of stuff. But when you're doing the rope thing, what you may want to do is when you say accept and you say make adaptive skin, that brings up a new subtool up here. And now this is all by itself, right? And if you do end up using the Dynamesh route, then you can just kind of do what we're doing now. Go to adaptive skin. Let's put that resolution up there, right? Let's go ahead and make adaptive skin. Come on up. Here's my adaptive skin. Go to your geometry, Dynamesh, turn on groups. Ooh, then it breaks. So let's go to mesh. If that ever happens where you ever get this kind of mess come up, mesh integrity, check mesh integrity, fix mesh. There, that fixes that. And now our pieces are separate. So that's the way to do it. But your Z sphere itself, it's always going to be, whatever's attached to this is always going to be attached to it when you make adaptive skin. So maybe have a couple different ones that you send off so that you bring it back together. So if you do end up making a rope, so something like this, back up, Control Z, there we go. You want to come up here, you want to make a rope, snap that, right? Move this here, Q. We're going to attach this guy right there. Maybe move this one off on this side, right? Attach this guy, and then we'll touch this guy. And move that over there. You're going to have something like this, and then you're going to go ahead and go to Adaptive Skin and hit Preview. Let's just turn that off for here, right? Maybe make a couple of these, so that way you have them. And if you try to duplicate it, it's going to say Z-sphere mesh has been modified. Would you like to create a Polymesh 3D? Discard your changes or stay in preview mode? Say yes. And look at it makes your separate pieces that then you can auto group. So that's the thing to remember when you're working with a Z-sphere. One Z-sphere, one welded subtool. So hopefully that helps out. But that's definitely a good way to do it. When you're doing a rope, a way I've built a rope, if you guys would like to see real fast, is what's really cool is when you bring up a new cylinder or you grab, just switch that right there. Let's clean this up. Come in here and you grab, let's say, any object, and you bring that in and you drag that. Notice how this is white. It's not a colored object yet. It's just a white, a white cube, or doesn't matter, white ring, right? Or whatever, a terrain, a plane, a sphere, right? Whatever it is, when you drag it out, before you hit make Polymesh 3D, right? Before you do that, notice that down here at the bottom, we actually have a smaller menu. When you go to hit edit, you actually can adjust your object however you see fit. You can actually make your objects bigger or smaller. So I can make a diamond if I want. Let's divide it up really crazy. Right? I can change this however I need to. Make a little tabletop. So you can actually come in here and start playing with this however you see fit. And then once you get to something that you like, say, oh, I'm making a pumpkin and this is what I want. Then when you hit make Polymesh 3D, watch what happens to this menu on the right-hand side. It gets bigger because now we're in sculpt mode. And that's something to remember. Anytime you're bringing in a new object from your, a brand new object that's not going to be in made Polymesh 3D, you bring in a brand new thing. Let's bring in a ring. Go ahead and hit edit. Now I can go to initialize and I can start making changes to this on the fly. So if I wanted to make a rope, for example, one of the things I could do is I can come here to a helix in edit mode. And then what I can do is start messing with all of this subdivision here, change my alignment, change my coverage, say, oh, you know what? I'm actually going to want a lower coverage, maybe something like that. And then let's actually go with thickness here. Yeah, thickness will be fine. Let's actually go with radius. Delete that, make that all the same. I could start with something a little bit more like this. Come in here. So yeah, that's going to be really good. Now let's say I want this to repeat itself. Like maybe I want this rope to be wrapping around an object. Well, then I can go to twist. Oh, not twist, sorry. Coverage. I can make sure that it's divisible in half. So we'll pick something like that. Oh, I'm just messing about now. Coverage. Oop. Twist mode, maybe take that off. Radius, radius should be fine. Go ahead and just make something a little bit different. There we go. A little bit more round. Change that L divide. So I know that this line is be pretty decent. Now say I'm happy with that. That's the object I'm happy with. Then when I hit make Polymesh 3D, now not only can I go back there and make changes and say like, oh, I want something different. I want this crazy flare out. I can always come back to that tool, then hit make Polymesh 3D and it makes a new one. But from here, I now can sculpt change all of this stuff the way I want. So just remember, when you drag in a new item for the first time, you have this mode here. Go to edit mode, and you have initialize, in which you can change a lot of the stuff on the fly, however you see fit. Just kind of play with your sliders, see what's there. See like, yep, that's what I want. Wanted it tapered. Wanted to divide it. Something like that. There we go. Boom, perfect. Start sculpting some jets with a funky nose. Boom. Make Polymesh 3D. Now I got this guy right here. So there's 2 steps in that. Edit your mesh, make Polymesh 3D, sculpt on it. Good to go. And then we'll just go ahead and delete this stuff when we don't need it anymore. So delete all. Come through here. Really fun stuff. As you can see, this thing gets filled so fast. Okay. Where's my Ken? Let's delete all the stuff. Oh, shoot. I just deleted my Ken. Good thing we saved it. Alright, there we go. Oh, that was fun. I had a mini panic attack right now. It's like, oh my god, did I save it? Did I save it? Okay. Take this guy right here. Let's go to slice curve. So hopefully that answered your question with the Z spheres. I know I kind of went on a tiny little tangent. Awesome. Cool. Awesome. Great tip. Awesome. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. The panic attack heard round the world, right? Yeah, it's always fun to be like, oh boy. Cool. Not a problem. And remember too, all of this stuff gets saved on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube you can actually scroll back if you missed something I just explained while I'm live, and you can rewatch it, or you can just wait, and then we do save the streams afterwards for as long as YouTube will let us. So you can always go back if you miss something. Right now, I'm kind of looking at how my hand reacts when I make a fist. And again, we're going to fix the mesh, so I'm not too worried about it breaking. In fact, even if my parts or my sculpts get animated, I never care about how the mesh looks in the sculpt process. I only care about how the mesh looks at the end of the day when I present it. So for now, we're just going to break it. Easiest way to get it right. Break it, then dial it back. Dynamesh that one more time. Go. Why is it difficult to choose the single edge loop? More than one disappears when I just want to select one. So a lot of times, if you're just selecting one edge loop and multiple ones disappear, you have what is called a spiral. It means that the edge loop itself is not a clean edge loop. The mesh itself, it's not that it's dirty. That sounds bad. It's just it's not a straight line. So you select one and then it kind of spirals down. Or it selects multiple ones. It's just because doesn't have a clean or clear path. So when you select one edge loop, if that's the case, kind of check your topology. That could be part of it. Let me see if I can show you an example of what I mean. So yeah, if I do the select lasso, which selects only a single edge loop, yeah, if it does that, I'm like, I want that edge loop, boom. So this is what's just known as a spiral, meaning that loop goes around and then it splits off in a direction, and it's connected to another one that splits off, and it just like breaks the whole shape. So that in itself just needs a cleaner mesh. So either manually retopo it so that it's really good, or just Z-remesh it until it's manageable. That's the best thing. That's the best approach I recommend. Hello, how do I use Morph Target to change shapes between two different models and create a third model of a different shape? Wow. Cool. Great question. 1 second. Now, I'm going to preface this with I am not an expert in Morph Targets per se, but I use them from time to time. I'm not sure if you can Morph Target between two different models, as in two different subtools. but you can project history from one subtool to another. And I'm pretty sure Morph Target is subtool dependent, if I remember right. But give me 1 minute and we'll play around with it. We can kind of go over that a bit. Yeah, not a problem. You are more than welcome. Okay. Making a proper fist. Might have the base thumb in the wrong spot, so rotate this. Fix the thingy first. Bit. Yeah, okay. So I need this to be higher, actually. Be more like right here over this knuckle and rotate it this way, or a bit like this. Grab this one, mask that one off. Let's move this finger down a little bit more. I'm actually going to, this is why I keep parts in sections usually. It's a lot easier to just grab this part and move it where I need it to be instead of constantly trying to manipulate the whole piece. Yeah, 1 second. I got you. 1 minute. Go. Yay! We got mostly a fist here. We're getting there. Slowly but surely. Okay. So we'll on this hand, we'll do a morph target demonstration. So first things first, with morph targets in general, what you're going to want to do is you want to be able to go to morph target and hit the store morph target. Now, the store morph target, I believe, is just one subtool dependent. If it's turned on here, I can then adjust the distance, project, morph, etc., etc. But you have to store that first. Now, what store morph target does, for those of you who don't know, is it takes the mesh up to its current date and says, hey, this is how the mesh should look all the time. And if it's not, we're going to, any changes that we make from this point forward, it's going to basically allow us to kind of use the morph brush and dial it back or change it. So this is kind of like layers with a history additive without actually messing with the history itself. It is Control-Z dependent, so if you do hit store morph target, that is a stroke. ZBrush counts things as a stroke, so when you go to repeat something, if it's Control-Z, that is the memory in which it thinks. So if I move, that's a stroke. If I, you know what I mean? If I turn on a button like Thick Scan or Morph Target, it remembers it. Control-Z works most of the time. Now, in this case, I would like to give him a scar, right? So I'm going to go ahead and say orbs cracks, and we're just going to go ahead and I'm going to hit one a bunch of times, really cut that in deep. There you go. A weird scar, but that's the point. Now, morph targets, there is a morph target brush called Morph. What this does is it takes the stored morph target, turn off RGB for a second, and it remembers that, so I can paint back or create transitions of how that mesh used to be. Now, I don't know if it can cross subtools. I don't think so, but let's try it because I'm always down to learn something new. I'm going to delete that morph. What I'm going to do is I'm going to store a morph target with the hand. So I'm going to duplicate the hand. So I'm going to store a morph target. And then if I go to another subtool, notice that Morph Target is turned off, right? And if I were to try to hit store and then try to paint that back, nothing really is going to happen because it's dependent on that mesh. But here is one really cool thing, right? If we go back to the hand for a second, with Morph Target, if I Control-Shift-D duplicate, it keeps that Morph Target. So yeah, it's very much like layers in that sense. But it is subtool dependent to the best of my knowledge. You can switch at some point here. If you're unsure, like we'll click here. The switch geometry button stores the current object's geometry as a morph target, reverts its shape to that of the previous morph target. So meaning if you had something going on here, you made some changes. Here we go, change, boom, boom, that's what I want. Switched it back to what it was before, and then you can bounce back and forth. So that's what that was. Create different mesh is just it creates a new 3D tool and it adds to the tool palette. So that then takes your section. If I hit that, then now if I have my 3D palette, it should store it. There it is, right there. Boom. So it's crossing back and forth from one tool to another. I don't know if that works that way. But it would be nice if it did. That would be really cool. So hopefully that answered your question. Definitely Morph Targets, I use them mainly for like detailing. If I'm not sure I'm going to do something, I store a Morph Target. It's a little bit easier than a layer in that regard, at least in my opinion. Layers, I like them a lot, but I find that sometimes they've been a little finicky. And layers only work on that subdivision level, where Morph Target, it's going to capture the whole model, so it should be a little bit easier to work with in that regard. At my hand, my mighty hand. Now the other thing I definitely need to do real quick, need to straighten these fingers out because these fingers are bowing, not a jet, so make sure they don't do that. We also want our fists to be touching, our fingers to be touching. And the other thing too is I like to, it kind of down a little bit. That's gonna go more infinite. Hands kind of round. Not so straight, rigid. I could spend all day on a hand, I think. On the Pixelogic Lion King making video that was useful. Nice. No, I actually haven't seen the Lion King video, so I'm gonna have to pop in there and check that one out. Using Morph Targets, nice. Yeah, like I said earlier, I use them periodically. I don't use them as much, but that's how I have been using them. But definitely worth going in and updating my knowledge a little bit more. Let's see here. Can you give some tips on how to get hired by big collectible companies? Yeah, not a problem. Honestly, to get hired as a professional artist, you really need to showcase that you are consistent at what you do, that you're knowledgeable in whatever field you're trying to be hired as. So in this case, for collectible companies, you want to be able to produce the work they're asking for. So, for example, something like Funko. Funko hires with the idea that you know how to sculpt, not that you know how to sculpt a pop. They could teach you how to sculpt a pop, but they really want to know, can you digitally sculpt and create for production, which is crucial. Most toy companies or collectible companies want to make sure that you at least understand the pipeline enough to create a model and take it all the way down to the pipeline of manufacturing, which can just be as simple as 3D printing. Now, that's the first thing. The second thing is, so you got consistency. The other thing is just a really solid portfolio. Presentation is really key when you're trying to get hired. So, for example, we'll just look at my portfolio, for example. I go to my ArtStation. So, presentation is super key. You want to be able to showcase a variety of what you can do. So, for me, right out the gate, you see my face, you see the work that I can do, and you see where I'm from. And then also, too, it's okay to have your first piece be not the best piece, but it's the best you could do at the time. And then as you work your way up, right, you showcase that you're not only able to do the work, but you're also getting better over time. And then, of course, too, you want a nice, clean render, something that's like really showcasey. So a solid portfolio is key. For toy companies in general, ideally what you want to be able to do is show your render, show the breakdown of how you broke it up, show the print itself, and then, if you can, show a turn of the render, because with collectibles, you see full 360. Somebody can pick up the object and look at it all the way around. And then, 2, a clay render. Color can hide many imperfections. Clay cannot. So you showcase a nice, clean clay render. Even if it is just a ZBrush render, you show the 360 view, then they can see all of the detailing and the imperfections and, the quality of your model from there. And if you do that with all of your pieces and have a good presentation, click it. Again, go as elaborate as you want. For this piece here, I showed a turn that was just, because this piece involved looking all the way around it, I showed the turn out the gate, showed a clay turn out the gate, because I wanted somebody to be able to take a look at it and pick it apart. And then my render on all sides, close-ups if you're really proud of something and want to showcase a certain detail. And I haven't actually 3D printed this one, but since I have previous examples, once I 3D print and color and paint this, then those go up as well. Also, too, your little blurb here on the side, you don't need to make it super complicated. Just kind of quickly explain what it is, but you don't have to go too far in depth. So clean portfolio. And then the other thing is networking. Just respectfully bug the company that you want to work for. If you, even if they're not hiring, take your portfolio, send them an email, reach out to them, say, hey, my name is so-and-so. I'm a huge fan of your company. I really love, X, Y, and Z. Here is my portfolio. Would love to sit down and one day possibly work with you. You set something up kind of nice. You kind of become the squeaky wheel, and you'd be surprised that, do that enough times. You're going to get a lot of no's, but eventually you get a yes. And it just takes one company to kind of help work with you. And then after that, it's a little bit more of a downhill, because then you get on the job training, and then you can say, oh, I worked for so-and-so. And then that helps out a bit. So the networking, consistency, and a clean portfolio, and you are good to go. Ryan! Oh, thank you so much, Pablo. Let's see. What motivated you to start with ZBrush? That's a great question. ZBrush, I fell in love with it. I wish I could say every program I've used to fall in love with it, but I legitimately just fell in love with ZBrush. What made me start using ZBrush? So I have a background in aerospace. So I've been, let's see, I started in aerospace in 2005, and I ended aerospace in 2018. So a while. Anyway, I was already doing Photoshop at that time. I was really enjoying the 3D model aspect, and I was modeling for aerospace for CNC programming and millwork. And over time, what happened was in aerospace, I was making nuts and bolts. There's really nothing exciting about it to me, but I didn't want the skill set to be wasted. So I started searching on like what else could I use this skill set for. And at the time, I had just left aerospace and I got picked up as a graphic designer and a Photoshop retoucher for the film industry. I knew a buddy who kind of hooked me up, but I still wasn't super happy with that. So I was like, I want to do something else. So then a buddy of mine showed me ZBrush, and at the time I couldn't afford ZBrush, but at the time ZBrush didn't have Sculptris Pro. There was a program called Sculptris, and it was an online digital program that you could sculpt in. And it had that tessellating feature that Sculptris does. You just get it remeshed. It was really cool. And then I really, really liked that, but it was very limiting. So I went ahead and saved up some money, and I got ZBrush Core. And then the ZBrush live streams, in fact, I think A-Cube was the first person I saw, and then Shane Olsen shortly after that. And the fact that there were these amazing, talented artists doing this and showcasing their love for what they were doing, I was like, I like this. This is really cool. And then I found the Ask ZBrush videos, and then from there, I ended up seeing a couple courses online. The pandemic had happened, so I was like taking little courses here and there when I could. And then in 2018, I signed up for the 3D Character Workshop. And the more I practiced ZBrush, the more I just loved the program. And I just got it. It just clicked for me. So I just started using it. And then after that, I mean, it just was kind of downhill from there. And then I realized, then 3D printing came into my life. And then when 3D printing came into my life, I was like, wait, so I can model and I can print it and I can make it at home. And I had manufacturing experience from aerospace. So deburring, cleaning, polishing, sanding, troubleshooting, wiring, welding, like all of that stuff, I know it. So I just started taking that knowledge and using it at home. And the more I made, the more it challenged me to make something better in ZBrush, and the more I wanted to learn. So then I started learning anatomy, and because I loved sculpting characters, I'd see tons of people sculpting stuff online that was just mind-boggling. I was like, I want to do that. So yeah, and ZBrush just kept taking me to that next level. So yeah. So long story short, it's just something that I inherently fell in love with and then wanted to keep going. So, and that's how I got here. No, not NASA. I worked for a company called Alcoa. Alcoa basically owns all of the aluminum in the world. So yeah, Alcoa is huge. I found the 3D Character Workshop through the Pixelogic streams, as well as I had researched a bunch of schools that were online. I just Googled, digital sculpting classes, and 3D Character Workshop had popped up, and I heard about it from Shane himself. The 3D Character Workshop, he was begrudgingly mentioning it. And then after that, I saw the Vertex School and some other schools, but the 3D Character Workshop just spoke to me. So I was like, you know what? Let's do that. So yeah. Loved it. Yeah. How to draw on a mesh model while sculpting. You have like landmarks for anatomy and ZBrush. Oh, yeah, 1 second. Okay, real quick. I'm gonna go ahead and so obviously this oh his foot is flying. Grab that real quick. Oh, what's happening? Okay. Okay. Or whatever. We're just gonna delete that one so it doesn't matter. Let's just kind of move it into place. You can see here it does take a little bit of time to get something you're looking like. The biggest tip I can give you is if you're new to sculpting and or even if you've been doing it a while and you find like, you know, your work is kind of just like not where you want it to be, just take your time. Try not to stress too much about it. Really just focus on, you know, getting something that you're satisfied with. Never erase. I can yeah, like I know some people are really fast, but I like to take me time. Alright, let's save that real quick. Using quick sketch or poly painting. Yeah, so what I would do is one of two things. What I typically do is if I wanted to sculpt anatomy here real quick, what I actually do is just take I just take damn standard. What I do is I just come in here and I just start making landmarks. Like, okay, here's this right here. Then want the anatomy here. Here's the grab this right here. Need the serratus muscles coming in here. Right? Just sketch it. Sketch it however you see fit. Or poly paint it. And when you poly paint, make sure you fill it with one color, then switch to another color. And then, yeah, just kind of make your markings a little bit. Kind of check yourself. Be like, yeah, okay. Deltoid's going to come over here. That's going to come there. We have another, say, muscle right there. Then we have the other deltoid right there. We have the bicep coming in here. Bi means 2. So there's a muscle line down there. Tricep muscle. So with the tricep, you have the long head. That's actually on the inside. So, but I will tell you, like, a lot of this is studying. The biggest thing you can do, guys, is download Anatomy for Sculptors or get yourself an écrochet and follow the écrochet as close as you can. But then once you have it all kind of drawn out, right? Once you're satisfied with everything that you have, then from there, you know, you can go ahead and start sculpting it in, carving it in. But whichever works for you. I tend to fall on the damn standard because I'm already going to cut in those edges and then I'm already going to, you know, define them. So I tend to use damn standard when I draw that stuff out. Okay, something I noticed real quick, since we're on the topic here of anatomy, is turn that off. Convert that. Arms are a little bit more back, kind of out like this. Forward a bit. That in. Anatomy is just tons of practice too. You know, you'll get better at it the more you practice it. Drawing and blocking out is very good, effective way for drawing and blocking out is very good. The technique is totally up to you. That's using brushes. Please tell me using only drawing. I'm not quite sure exactly what you really... Not quite sure what your question really is. If you let's see. How to draw on a mesh or model while sculpting? I mean, that's not quite sure what else you would need. Maybe I'm misunderstanding it, which is highly possible. And then that would be my fault. So I apologize if I don't understand the question. fix this real quick. We gotta get back to the hand. So we got about an hour left. Usually go until about 8. But let's see how far we can get. I think we can get to the point where we're going to start welding this back together and going through. I mean, drawing first, probably using quick sketch and then blocking out the drawing concept. You could definitely do that. I don't do it that way. What I do is I first block out my anatomy following an écrochet of sorts. So quite frankly, let me pull up my base mesh that I'm still finessing a little bit, but might give you an idea. I'm gonna load up. Let me go to my desktop here. Study. Nope. Where is it? Where is it? I just moved everything recently, so. Aha, here we go. Okay. Let me show you how I block out. Maybe this will help you out a little bit more. Okay, so we're going to change color. So what I do, first things first, is I like to pull in a skeleton. Something that is easy enough to kind of correct my proportions as much as possible. And then what I do is I pull up an anatomy chart. I tend to use anatomy for sculptors, but what you can do is you can literally just Google anatomy écrochet, and you can find something really easy and fun to use. And then what I do is I then take my spheres and I start blocking out sections. So I build out the deltoid, I build out triceps, biceps, forearms, abdomen, legs. You take it as far as you want. For me, personally, I'm just trying to get the main shapes, but sometimes when you see connection points or cuts in things like, you know, the hamstrings, the quads, the calf muscles, where there's indentations of connections even through skin, then I kind of make that muscle group itself. And then from there, I end up welding it together. So here it's kind of this sketch here, and then I weld it together. And then after that, I spend time cleaning it up, really just kind of perfecting it as best as I can. Then after that, I end up taking a low version. I ZBrush it into a lower version. I split it up from the head, body, hands, and feet. And then I usually save out that mesh, and then I have my base mesh. I don't always block from a sphere, but it's really great practice to come in and start from at least a muscle block out section. And then, of course, too, the skeleton is, you have two different skeletons. Male skeletons are different than female skeletons. There's a little bit different hip, pelvis points. Shoulders are a little wider on one over the other. So the skull on a female is different than a skull on a male. So learning those differences, that's why I start from the skull, or from the skeletal structure itself. It gives me those differences out the gate, so I know I'm sculpting a male when I have this type of skeleton. If you want a female skeleton, ZBrush has one. You go to Tool, Ryan Kingsley, he has his ZTL écrochet in here, which is the female body. But that skeleton is a female skeleton, so you can use that skeleton for your female models versus your male, because the ribcage is different too. That's how I block out stuff. I don't typically draw too much. I'm not much of a 2D artist, but knowing how to draw can definitely help you out. So that's where I usually start. Yeah, there's tons of great ways, absolutely. Do I always sculpt the model in the final position? I only sculpt the model in the final position when I am doing a statue. When I'm doing anything for animation or game ready, I typically will take T-pose as far as I can go, and then after that, I do a test pose. But but not for, yeah, so for game ready assets, animation, anything that's going to get rigged, depose all the way. For my statues, I do posed mainly because I feel like I can get a much better expression from that pose than I can if I just try to pose it after it's all detailed. Plus, you end up fixing stuff anyway. With game ready or animation ready assets, you're building a high res that you can project onto a low res. So you build that high res up and it gets super detailed, then you retopo, and then with that retopoed mesh, you project all those details back, and that low model, that low poly version can then be animated without necessarily breaking your model. With statue work, we don't need to retopology unless we're really wanting to, but we don't have to. Mesh can be as ugly as you want it to be. So you could keep it Dynamesh, you could keep it tessellated, you can keep it sculptressed all over the place. It's up to you. But to get that expression, I find it easier for me to pose it and then asymmetrically fix all those details and get it nice and clean. So the method is definitely optional, but I find it easier that way. You're watching Aaron Blaze animation drawing tutorials combine 2D and 3D. It's great. That's awesome. Yeah, I personally can draw, but I don't consider myself a 2D artist because I don't really depend on that knowledge so much. I typically would just sketch or get an idea out, but I don't necessarily do it. My brain works really well on taking something I see and then making it fit that thing. So conceptualizing sculpting off of a concept is a really big skill set of mine. I can draw what I can see, I can sculpt what I can see. So, but I think personally, any type of artistry helps you become a better artist, but you don't need to be a 2D artist to be a great 3D artist. They don't necessarily correlate all the time, but they are very helpful to one another if you can do it. So those who can definitely should. I definitely agree trying it out. I personally don't think that way, so it doesn't seem to help me much. But that's just me. I'm a special kind of flower. By the way, Aaron Blaze got sick. I like his work. This knuckle's a little too high, so we can fix that. This knuckle's wrong here. Should have a nice straight line coming back down. Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Drawing is great practice to visualize forms and have fundamental knowledge. Absolutely. I am just saying that me personally, I think clearer and better in a 3D environment than I do in a 2D environment. Because, and maybe this is just my own personal hang-up, but I don't want to fake 3D. I just want to live in it. You know what I mean? So like with 2D drawing, everything is completely planar. You know, it's flat. You have to manipulate shadows and light in order to give the illusion of 3D space. Whereas here, I just get to kind of live in 3D space and correct it as I need it. So I'm not denying it's great practice at all. Please don't misunderstand. It's just not something that works for me. That's all. My own little thing. Yeah, I get the question all the time, like, do I have to be a good 2D artist to be a good 3D artist? No, I know plenty of 3D artists that can't do 2D, but I will say people who can do any type of art pick up other mediums of art faster than somebody who's never picked up art before. You know what I mean? So if you take somebody who's never touched art before and they're trying to learn art for the first time, and we're removing natural talents out of the way because there are some people who just are like, boop, I got it. Just the average situation, a person who knows nothing about art in general is going to have to develop that art, that creativity, and that artistry mindset and learn the basic foundations. Somebody who understands 3D sculpting, for example, and they're given a pencil and pen, and paper for the first time, they're going to automatically rely on the knowledge they already have, which will get them there a little bit faster. And they'll learn how that medium responds, and then they'll adapt accordingly. So that plays a factor. So it definitely helps each other. It helps helps the person learning a bit better, or a bit quicker on how to maybe draw or sculpt. But for some like myself, I don't know. Yeah, it's helpful, but I don't rely on the knowledge just because I don't use it enough. Probably should. But also in drawing, we use building blocks, cubes, cylinders to create colors. Yeah, that's very true. Absolutely. Absolutely. That is correct. Yeah, you usually start with a cylinder, a sphere. You start with, squares, circles, exactly. So that's all I mean. So hopefully, like I said, please hopefully, no, I'm not knocking it. Definitely yeah, it is great. Do it. Just explaining my mindset. Yeah, I love 3D always. Yeah, nice. Yeah. Okay. Kind of just looking at my own hand right now, trying to get the right shapes. Definitely a little bit of a bend there. A little bit of funkiness going on, so I want to correct that. Come back to it in a minute. I don't want to necessarily walk away with it being broken, but I definitely don't want to get hyper focused either, which is a very real thing. So once you get something that you're like, okay, this is actually pretty decent, I can live with this momentarily, bounce around, move on to another thing. There we go. Okay. Right, let's go ahead and mirror and weld that. That up. Let's get that right connection point. Get this all fixed. And we're going to be working on this project for a little while, so hopefully you guys will enjoy the whole process. I typically like to showcase the entire process, even if I break it and then bring it back. And if I do anything off stream, I tend to then just explain what I did. So if we come back next week and I'm a lot further along, it's just because I'll work on correct, but I won't push it too far because I don't like going too far out. That way you guys see the whole process. Usually how many hours a day do I spend modeling? So on average, I spend about 8 hours at work. I'm in ZBrush a good chunk of that time, unless I'm doing any type of renders or any other special thing they have me do. And then I'll usually try... I used to model like straight after work for another couple hours, but I found myself getting burnt out a little bit. So typically what I'll do is, you know, I'll spend like, on average, besides my 40-hour work week, I'll spend another 6 to 10 hours a week, including Saturday and Sunday, excluding this stream, to add to my own personal projects, just to stay up to date. But I also, too, take those times to more study, because I feel like as an artist, we're kind of like, it's gonna sound weird, but bear with me here. As character artists, we kind of have the same approach as a medical doctor, meaning we have to study the human body a lot in order to understand how the body moves, how the body is manipulated, how the body functions, so that we can keep producing the best art possible. So I take those times to study further in anatomy. I take those times to learn different techniques, and I even take those times to learn other programs. Because I'm in ZBrush for my job, 8 hours a day minimum, I'm able to kind of be like, oh, I want to learn Unreal Engine more, or I want to learn, you know, I want to learn body dynamics more. So then I will start taking more lessons. So I'm forever trying to challenge myself and study when I can, where I can. So, yeah, it's not all sculpting, but it's definitely like, oh yes, I want to do this more. Yeah, study animals too. I do, absolutely. Yep. Because I want to sculpt more creatures, and I'll be able to do that with I'll be able to do that when I know the anatomy of creatures a little bit more. Bugs are fascinating. I sculpted a spider my second year in ZBrush, and it was a lot of fun, but I knew nothing about that anatomy. So definitely a lesson. Bug anatomy is cool because you get to kind of like, there's a lot there, trust me, but it's good practice because not everybody sees the anatomy of a spider, so you can get away with a little bit more. But anatomy of animals, bugs, creatures, they're so fascinating, and sometimes they're more complex than human anatomy, so it's neat to get that practice in where you can. And then to answer your question, I saw, so yes, I do end up, once I'm happy with the overall shape of the hands and body, I'll then weld it back together. We're getting pretty close to do that with the body itself, and then we could start fixing and sculpting that anatomy in correctly. But before I weld it in, I take a look at all of those shapes and make sure that my shapes are at least what I'm happy with before I start messing about, you know? I'll come through and make sure, like, okay, is this what I'm looking for? Is this at all? Am I happy with this so that I can focus on putting it back? Get this pants on. Let's go ahead and hit transpose for a second because I want to make sure that we manipulate this as much as possible. We're going to have some wind happening, so we might be using some dynamic cloth here in a little bit. But for right now, we're going to just kind of keep that shape decent. Yeah, okay, that's looking better. Lion King and Zootopia was great. Oh my gosh, yes. Hey, let's see here. I agree. I like to compare 3D, learning 3D as to working at NASA. Yeah, absolutely. I understand what you mean. We can always improve and keep learning. Yep. The best part about this job is that you get to really dive deep in the knowledge. It's ever learning, it's ever growing, and the more you know, the better the better an artist you can become. And what's really cool is at some point, when you've seen and really dived into one anatomy chart, you ultimately are like, I've seen them all. But then you start having talks and conversations with other artists, and they see things differently. I was actually talking to my buddy Ryan in the Discord the other day, and we were talking about skeletal anatomy, and he saw planes. He saw planes differently than I saw planes. So we started discussing it and comparing our notes, and we had this really good conversation that made us both kind of come out on top. Like, hey, we understand the anatomy just a little bit better than we did when we walked that conversation. And so at some point, you're like, you grow together. And the more you dive into that, the more you want to talk about it. For me, I'll learn something new, and they'll be like, oh, look, guys, I learned a new thing. Let me show you. That's just kind of how I function. So, yeah, I find it to be really fascinating. Yeah, it was awesome, right, dude? What's up, Ryan? Wasn't sure if you're here or not. Yep, absolutely. When I took martial arts, I took Taekwondo for about 6 years, and my grandmaster always was like, teach white belt, because the more you teach white belt, right, the like almost without a doubt, the more you teach the basic stuff, the better your more advanced stuff gets, because everything is based on that core fundamental, that core foundation that you build, whether it be how to kick something or how to draw something or how to paint something, right? So yeah, it's really cool to always go back to that. Okay, so as far as this pose goes, we're gonna really have to intensify his muscles, but I think the shape itself is at a good spot to merge it back together. So this is what I tend to do. I tend to save, right? And then might be a little overkill, but then I save another one where this will be 0.8. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and duplicate this one. I'll hide the original one, and then now we're going to go ahead and at least start getting this structured out. So we're going to go ahead and go to Dynamesh, turn off groups, and now we're going to go ahead and weld that bad boy together. Now we get to fix all this. Now, most of it is symmetrical with the exception of the legs, but what's cool is that the legs are more of a guide for us, not necessarily, we don't need to put too much detail on it unless we're going to showcase some of the legs. So we'll start from the middle, we'll focus on here, and let's bring in a brush to really focus on cleanup. And turn the softness down, focal shift, the intensity. Now we're going to go ahead and start getting some of this blocked out. Oh, let's just use the clay buildup. Turn that focal shift up. Let's do alpha 6. Go. Cool. Now, let's see what you said about different artists having different points of views. When I was learning, I watched a lot of how to sculpt hands videos, and I swear I never seen someone tear everything apart. just gotta rip it apart, man. Definitely will try it. Nice. Didn't see how you weld it. Oh, sure. So how I welded it was, let's go back. Whoop. All I did was, because we were using the Dynamesh method, Control Z, boom. So the Dynamesh method, because we had groups on, all I did was I went to, I just had a shortcut, but I went to Geometry, Dynamesh, and when groups are turned on, it keeps everything separated by polygroups. When you turn it off, and then you control swipe, now with groups off, it recognizes everything as one polygroup, and it brings it all together, and now it's all welded together because it's Dynameshed. That's why I use the Dynamesh method, because it's just easier for it to all come together. Now I can come through and I can start doing all the fun anatomy bits. Gonna go with a on a slightly harsher. And when I actually start defining muscle shapes, I actually try to use my brush and kind of build that anatomy up in the direction of the muscle fibers. Really, in my opinion, helps kind of bring things together a bit. When you smooth it out, it gives you that nice little bit of texture that you need. Not a problem. Yeah, so yeah, control swipe with Dynamesh helps with that. You're absolutely welcome. Got that long head, the tricep on the inside, and the shorter head on the outside. Now I'm just focusing on building volume, but I don't want to destroy, so I want to do a relax smooth. Relax smooth is when you hold shift, start smoothing, let go, shift, you just kind of scale it through. I also drop the intensity down a lot when I do that. Just super helpful. Damn standard to kind of cut all that detail in. Anatomy takes a while to make it look right, so you don't need to rush this part either. And like I said, I usually have an écorché of sorts. So I'm usually following some sort of anatomy. Just because I don't want to rely on my memory. My memory is not the best. It's easier to not look all the time, but I'm a huge fan of just look, check your work, build that. It'll be good. Cool is if you want to get to an area, even if it's Dynamesh, just hide a spot. Focus on that part. Didn't I make a duplicate, remesh it, and the projectile details? Hold on one second, sorry. Didn't you make a I duplicated it just so that if I really end up hating this piece, I can just come back and I have one that's not welded, but how I welded it was I just turned off Dynamesh. I do that too sometimes when I have a Dynamesh piece and then I'm ready to ZBrush and then hold details better. I typically then do that method, Polo, but not just yet. I'm still working this piece to get it where I want it to be. When it comes to combining with ZBrush, would you say? Wait, when it comes to combining with ZBrush, would you say Maya or 3ds Max? I'd say whatever works for you. You know, if you want to bring in assets from other software, just pop it in, and you're good to go. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, looking pretty good. Okay, we got about 30 minutes left, guys. So you know, but hopefully you guys are enjoying yourself. Gonna mask that section off. Get in there. Yep. Bits here. Infold coming up. Wait. Now for abs, I tend to kind of just quickly paint something in there, but then I don't define them too quickly until I don't define them too quickly at all because abs are typically asymmetrical. So you'll see me a lot of times kind of just smooth it out, and then I'll end up breaking that up when I'm getting to the final stage. Put the serratus in there a bit. Something to look at. Find the back a bit. Then we got to figure out how beefy we want to make this dude. Flat spot right there. Little bony landmark. And he's Ken freaking Masters, so... And it's anime, so we're gonna have to probably push it a little heavier. A good tip on making a big body is making the head smaller, so focus on some of that. Now, you might ask, I've had this question before, am I going to detail the legs even though he has pants on? I'm not going to detail the legs too crazy, but if I decide at some point that I'm going to want to detail the legs, then what I will end up doing is giving a little bit of definition. And then if I decide to cut in, I can finesse that the rest of the way. But I like putting in all the basic shapes so that I have a good foundation if I decide to come back. Also, too, just helps with practice. You might as well practice. Really clenching back here. Okay. I look like Bruce Lee. Yeah, exactly. ZBrush is great, however, it falls very short in the posing department. I guess that just depends on how you want to pose. I work asymmetrically. I personally don't mind it, but yeah, to each their own. Definitely gonna round these shoulders up a bit more. And like I said, we're gonna go ahead and just those triceps are like like 1/3 your arm. So definitely worth taking the time to get that part right. And I have a kind of a messy style too, so I kind of just get in here and I just start putting in landmarks that I know should be there. And I refine it after the fact. Something like this. I'm going to grab this guy right here. Whoops. Grab that section. Go. Always a little gap right here. And he's flexing right here, so this bicep is actually going to be contracting a little bit. So we're going to kind of pop in there. Hey, what's up, Neil? I agree. I hate posing my models. I always wondered if I should work asymmetrically. You know, I'm a sculptor, right? So for me, asymmetrically sculpting is very important to my work. Like I said, for statues or toys, I tend to find that getting that pose quickly and working within that pose is a very key elements to a good pose. So, yeah, I'd say, you know, if you sculpt for toys or you sculpt for 3D printing, where it's not going to be rigged or animated in any way, then practicing asymmetrically sculpting is going to be very beneficial to your work. I mean, you know, we're already fortunate enough to not have to work in clay. Just my thoughts. Me thoughts. Okay, I gotta get this lower layer out a little bit more. In this pose, because he's not running or punching or diving, the dynamic portion is going to be the anatomy, right? So making sure that my anatomy is on point. So I'm going to be taking my time. This is almost going to be an anatomy study. So it's important to make sure that that's lining up the way I want it to, best as I want it. Oh, yes. I typically make these lives on Sundays, yes. As it stands right now, every Sunday from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, I am live here, yes. Okay, what we're going to do, before we get too crazy with getting further into this, right? What I'm going to want to end up doing is actually, let's turn on Backface Mask real fast and fix this bicep. But let's get the head in its place, and then we got to start fixing that head a bit, because the head is just all sorts of wrong right now. Oh. Let's get that head in place, and let's start at least refining it, because right now we just have that block out. And then next week we'll do the hair, which I'm really excited about. Come here, let's grab the eye and the head. Skip that bad boy. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the head right here, okay? And then I'm going to turn on Stager, the Geometry, Stager, Home Stage. I'm also going to select that eye, hit Home Stage. Then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and position this where I need it to be. He's really tucking his head. Like, really tucking it. His head is almost touching. Like, if we look at our reference real quick, right? His head is like, I mean, he's freaking touching. So for right now, we're going to have it be something more like right there. Okay, target stage. Target stage. Okay, now I'm going to switch stage on the eyes and switch stage on the head. Now I can work on the head, and at any point in time, I can just switch that where I want it to be. This head is all sorts of booga booga, so let's fix that. But this way I can continue to work on this symmetrically in this position, and then I can fix the rest. Oh, the hair, gotta love some tips on it. Oh yeah, we'll get to that next week. You'll love it. Amazing. I'll keep following you for that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so right now, what I want to do is I'm going to pull up his face. We're kind of going in between, a cross between Alpha 3 or 03, depending on where you are in the world, and the Alpha movie. So kind of in between there, because this is the Alpha movie, and I love this pose here, and this crazy dynamic flex. I'm thinking we're going to try to lean more towards this, but this has a little bit more information So on the 3/4 view. So I'm going to kind of cater between these two here, but everybody sees this face as kin. I think they recognize this a little bit more than this guy. So we're kind of going to mix between the two and see what happens. So this will be kind of, this won't be quite an anime head, but it won't be a real head. We're going to kind of like go between it all. So we already have the starting block out, so let's start cleaning it up. I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to create some lines here that are going to help kind of guide me a bit. So that skeletal structure underneath might help me a bit more. So I'm just taking Dynamesh and guiding myself here. Take the clay brush. Let's kind of carve into it a little bit. ZBrush, so we can always bring that information back. Thank you, thank you. Okay. Take the damn standard. Come in here a little bit. Now my Dynamesh might be a little high, so let's actually go to Geometry, Dynamesh. I'm going to kick that resolution down a little bit. Yeah, it's still too high. It's still too high. There we go. That's better. And we want to kind of, I think this is why I'm also going to be going to that Alpha 2.0 or Alpha 3.03 look. I think these Street Fighter characters, they're just a little, they live a little bit more in reality, so. Let's see. I have a big difficulty making anime faces. I can make high detail faces with wrinkle, etc., but for some reason I find it difficult to make anime faces. Anime faces, don't feel bad about that sentence at all, because I will tell you, anime faces are inherently difficult because they break facial anatomy. So, there's a trick to anime faces, and in a real face, right, you have the 3/4 view, which is the best view. It gives us the depth of the nose, the eye sockets, the plane changes between the front of the face and the side of the face, our cheekbone height, our ear location, the eyebrows. Like, it gives us so much information, right? Anime faces, they live between the front view and the profile, not 3/4. So anime faces are hard. So I'll show you, let me show you a really quick little trick on on how I approach anime faces. Because I think once you watch it, you'll be like, oh, okay. The rule number one with anime faces is do yourself a favor and forget that you even are going to follow any type of anatomy structure. Of course, you have your basic, like, you know, oh, you have your ears halfway back of the head, you have your overall head shape. That's fine. But there's key elements within an anime face that you have to follow in order for it to work out well. So if you would like to make an anime face, first things first, let's go ahead and let's block out an anime head. What I tend to do is find some sort of anime shape, and I tend to follow that. But let's just go off on the fly here for a second. First things first is the anime head itself. The human skull, right? We have, and let me open this bad boy up here real quick. The human skull is kind of more oval, right? And then we have the structure here. We have this. That's not how an anime head is. An anime head, okay, starts off round. And then from there, tapers in. Comes down a little bit like this, and then it tapers in to this point. Okay? And then the face, starting with the eyes, lives in this section. But the head starts off from a sphere. So with a real skull, you're going to start more with this compressed egg shape. And then you're going to end up getting that plane shape in there. And then you live in that world. Anime head here, we're living here within this world. Then your ears, is a really bad drawing, but you get the sense. Your ears are here, and where the eyes line up, all lives within this section. Okay, that was a really bad explanation on the visual side, but so with this, you're gonna start with this shape here, okay, and then go ahead and duplicate just like such. And then I typically, I'll stretch this out a little bit, and I'll take something like clip curve down. Then we got to wrap this around a little bit. Move this down a little bit. Go ahead and auto group it just to give you a basic idea. The other thing I tend to do, something like this. Actually lower this resolution a bit. Lower groups. Okay. You're kind of living here, this world. And the other thing you want to remember is the cheeks themselves. Right? You get a plane change you don't know about. So your cheeks kind of, the chin kind of flares out a little bit. There's this plane change here. So you're going to have to kind of live in that plane change a little bit. The face is always point. So let's blow it up. Give you something like this a little bit. Going kind of fast just to kind of show it a bit. You're living within this realm here. You want to start with that circle. And actually, you know, we were talking about drawing earlier. Well, if you can draw an anime head, you can almost sculpt one if you follow the same logic. So the breakdown of that. Kind of a really bad fast example, but hopefully it shows it a little bit better. I can show you a head that I've done. Let's see here. Yeah, anime face is really hard to do. So you want to start with that shape there. So let's load up a model I've done to give you a more clear example. Let's go with... The other thing, too, is that the ears and stuff matter. In fact, actually, before we pull up that model, let me do this real fast. So what I tend to do is head guides. So what I tend to do is grab something like this image here. Most of the time, you can find something that's just this simple, and it starts with that sphere base. This is what you're building up. You're building up that sphere. Then the profile is the hardest part, right? So you're getting this shape here. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more. Actually, you know what? Let's just go to my pure ref, and I can blow it up for you. So the majority of face is in the first half of that, and then you have to kind of, here's that sphere, and then everything else is just like kind of on this half of the face. So if you think about it in quadrants, right? Let's go ahead and do. You're not going to draw for me? Okay, fine. So, oh, okay, wow, you can't draw on pure ref. That's weird. But you get the idea. So if you draw this in quadrants, you draw this in half here. 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of think it like that. 1, 2, 3, 4. The face is residing in this lower quadrant here, just on that first half of the head. So you're kind of emulating that. And what I do is I take the head shape and I kind of bring this into ZBrush, and then I follow this. And that helps me out a lot to get the base shape the way I want it. So then when I reside and I come back in here, right, I can just focus on getting that shape. But yeah, anime faces, it takes some time. You have to kind of throw anatomy out the window when you're making an anime face. It's almost like you're breaking the rules on purpose. So if you kind of then flare the nose out and the mouth gets flared out a little bit, right? You start living in this world here. That helps make the shape. This lower jaw needs to show, and sometimes I'll do like, I'll get the pinch tool, and I'll pinch that, and pinch that back. And then the bottom part of the jaw almost needs to be kind of flush a little bit. To get this kind of plane change happening there. And then on the side here, you can kind of clip that a little bit. Boop. We put the ears. So this part here, the other part to remember is that the side of the head needs to disappear. When you're looking at it straight on and you have ears, the side disappears and you get the front spot. And then when you rotate it to the side, the spot here becomes visible. So it's really the profile shape. And then what also, this part gets a little funky too. Sometimes the head comes forward a little bit, rounds up a bit. So it just depends on the style of anime too. But that's how you'd want to start it. You'd kind of just want to get those two shapes going together and then work them out. Put the ears in there, and then like I said, the face is going to be on this half. This is your face. So hopefully that makes sense. I know it was kind of like thrown together. If you guys would like, I can go over an anime head more in depth on another stream, because I feel like we can get a lot of attention on it, and we can get those simple rules broken down so that you could follow yourself. But it's not your typical anatomy head. So, and I rambled on for pretty much the length of the time, so hopefully that made sense. Yeah. I think there's a false illusion anime faces are easier because they don't have much detail. Absolutely correct. A lot of people think that the simpler the drawing, the easier the sculpt, and it's quite the opposite. The more detail you have, the more information you have to actually put in your sculpt. The hardest sculpt I've ever done was actually Gravity Falls. You guys want to see that piece effect? You get the point? Awesome, cool. Seems like the same process learning another language. You're from Brazil and you have to throw a lot of language rules. Yep, exactly. So here, let me switch over this guy real quick. So that spotlight out for a second. So these characters were really difficult to sculpt because there's almost no information on the face. If you look up Gravity Falls, go Gravity Falls, right? And we look up their characters, go to image. Yeah. Okay, so this is the face. That was really difficult to capture. Right? So it's that same difference. It's like, you know, these characters, while I was able to get their base shape out quickly by moving back over, boop, here's that shape. If I were able to get the base shape of these characters out, I could say, oh, cylinders, spheres, cubes, etc., right? But these characters are so simplistic that it made it very difficult to get it right. So taking a look at just how those shapes were, it was interesting putting them into 3D space. So yeah, so when you're looking at what to sculpt, tend to go for something a little bit more detailed, because then you'll be able to definitely get more information from them faster than you would if it's like, oh, it's a simple cartoon character. But that's what I really love about how I learned how to sculpt, because if, like we were talking earlier about 2D, blocking out shapes and primitives, if you just start with that workflow, you just grab a shape, put it in there, try to manipulate it, put another shape in there, manipulate it. Ultimately, it helps out with the way you see shapes and the way the way you can break down information into shapes helps you block things out quicker, and then that helps you get to your result a little faster. So, okay. Yeah, landmarks are minimal to measure against. That's absolutely right. Should you take your time when you block out a character, or should that be quick? Honestly, the best tip I could say with that is always take your time, no matter what. Never rush it, because you'll miss volume and proportion if you speed through it. Over time, you will naturally get faster, and the more you do similar or repetitive actions, the easier it will be to get those on paper quickly. I tend to be pretty fast in my block out naturally, and then I slow down when I get to details so that I can focus on getting all the right information. I would try not to worry about being fast. Just worry about being consistent in your work, and speed will come over time. And I know that sounds kind of like, well, obvious, but at the same time, I used to be very, very fast to the point where I would mess up things, or I would find mistakes later. And that just kind of killed me in the end. So ultimately, I slowed myself down, and then I realized that my blackouts got faster, and then my technique got better, and then I was able to get to the detailing phase faster, in which I could focus more on. So I would say never really worry about being fast. That's going to happen no matter what. Just focus on getting it done right, and then repeat that action, and then you'll get faster over time. Okay. So we got about here. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to keep cleaning up the head a little bit, maybe off stream, just because we started that process and we've pretty much run out of time. But I want to take the time to thank all you guys for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it. Hopefully the stream was helpful. And like I said, in the future, let's go over more how to sculpt an anime head. Got some really fun projects. We just did a Demon Slayer piece, and there was about, like, I don't know, 8 or 9 live streams dedicated to just that. But if you would like to see more anime sculpting as well, that's one of the things I love to do, so we can definitely do that more often. But again, thank you guys so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. Thank you for all your questions. Hopefully I answered them as best I could, that you guys found satisfactory. So let me know in the comment section down below, especially if you're watching this afterwards. when I hit end here in a minute. If it was helpful to you guys. But I really appreciate it all. And yeah, you guys take it easy. Enjoy the rest of your, well, rest of your week, because I'll see you next week. I got a lot of tips today, and I will apply this week. Nice. Nice. All right, guys. Well, you all are amazing, and I appreciate every single one of you. So you guys enjoy yourself, and I will catch you next Sunday. Bye, bye, bye. Bye, bye, bye.